Today's episode is a special one. Went on ahead and put this together for Veterans Day. I have a friend of mine on here, Mr. Santiago Sanchez. Give you a quick background of him. He is a retired 18 Delta in the United States Army, which is a Special Forces not weapon. That's Bravo. Special Forces medic, and Special Forces medic, and he's also law enforcement. And here at the GrayMan Podcast, we definitely value our veterans in the military, and we value law enforcement. And this is your first time on the show, sir. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're gonna just roll out real quick, kind of give us a background of your upbringing, like where you from, what your childhood was like. The floor is yours.
How you doing? Hello to everybody. Happy Veterans Day. Uh, Santiago Sanchez. I'm a native Texan, born in San Antonio, Texas. Grew up with just myself and a younger sister. She's 2 years younger than I am, and kind of grew up in the bad side of town, the poor side of town, I guess. Uh, and grew up with my mom. And at some point, my dad took me away from her. I think it was about 4 or 5 years old, and that's all I remember growing up with my dad. And I think I grew up having maybe 40 stepmothers, because my dad was a player and he just went from town and traveled the world like that, basically, in different places in the U.S. Uh, and you know, missed a lot of solid bonds growing up. And my dad, ended up getting into drugs and doing stuff like that, even selling. I remember he was selling drugs, got hooked up on him, in a bad situation. So I grew up, my kids always get tired of hearing me when they always complain about something. I say, hey, I ended up working in the fields and I did this. Okay, Dad, yeah, no, I know it was hard growing up, but so they always complain, and my oldest one is 45. So we've got two daughters and a son. I ended up finally settling down with my grandparents in my sophomore year here in San Antonio, on my mother's side, because I told my dad, I said, hey, I'm tired of moving around, and I wanted to, stay somewhere and create some friendships and actually graduate from school, because I ended up, I think, failing a grade on the seventh or eighth because I was just so far behind, jumping from one city to another. So that's where I would met my wife. You get the fever here and there, and back in those days, sex education wasn't much of a big thing. So we ended up conceiving. We conceived our oldest daughter in high school, and I was struggling, man. I was struggling. Didn't have any mentorships, so I was struggling working as a grocery stocker for a chain called Piggly Wiggly back in the day. And so going to school, my wife and I, here, uh, and the grocery business was great. I loved it. I loved being a grocery stocker and doing everything with the grocery chain. I think if I would have ended up with the right chain, like here in San Antonio area, it's called the grocery chain that's on top of everybody is called HEB. I think I would have I think I would have retired out of the grocery business. I just loved what I was doing, interact with people and but they started going downhill and went bankrupt. So I said, hey, I need some money. I mean, we're gonna have a baby in August. Here May's coming around. We're gonna graduate. So I went to a recruiter, and I just joined the army for no reason. A lot of my friends, the Marine Corps, because of the uniform. I'm like, I don't want to follow the crowd, and I didn't have any buddies to mentor me. So I said, let me just try the army, and I joined, and it went off from there. And
That's funny that you say that, because that you're telling me about your life story, and I can relate to some degree, but I definitely relate about being in high school. Um, that's the reason why I joined the army too. Like I had a girlfriend in high school, and we had sex education, but I didn't pay much attention to it, obviously, because I ended up having a baby also, and I just started looking around at my surroundings, like, I cannot be in this neighborhood. I cannot live in this environment and have a kid. Like, I have to do something different. And and what's funny is when I enlisted initially, because it got pushed back until till later. But when I initially enlisted, like I was going to MEPS on September 11th to do the whole pick a job type, you know what I'm saying? And it was closed. And so yeah, that's kind of what started my journey to go into the Army also. Now, we're talking about the Army and your journey into the Army. What inspired you? We know what inspired you to join the Army to better your life, create better conditions for family. But what inspired you to join one of the most elite segments of our military by being the United States Army Special Forces? And for those that don't realize that, you know, you hear talk of special forces, and you have to understand that special forces is a unit in the United States Army. There are special operations. Special operations are, say, your PSYOPs, your Army Ranger, your Navy SEALs, Special Forces. A lot of people know you guys as Green Berets or like JTACs, pararescue. But for you, the United States Army Special Forces, what inspired you to take that path, sir?
Go back, regress a little bit, because I've written to CNN, to CNBC, because sometimes I'm watching the news and special forces, they killed Bin Laden, and the first thing that pops in my mind, man, I wonder if I know some of those guys. You never know, and then it comes out. It was a combination of SEAL team. You know, I love the SEAL. I love all spec ops, but you know, the SEAL teams have a rep about. They come out with a movie every year,
or both.
Or so, but at the end of the day, it was special forces and maybe Navy SEAL Team 6 and Delta, but it wasn't special forces. So I always try to correct those journalists and say, look, man, there's only one special forces. Most people know us as the old name Green Berets, but when you talk about other groups, it's special operations, you know. So stop forces been throwing it out there because there's only one special forces and the other ones are special operations units, which is a big, and it could be Rangers, Delta Force, Navy SEALs. So anyway, that always ticks off because there's some of my buds out there, you know.
And this is no way a knock on our Navy SEAL buddies. We understand that it's like a watch. Every cog, spring, and hand on that watch serves a purpose. And the Navy SEALs are definitely an integral part of the spec op community. And we have a lot of love and respect for those guys. But this is also something for people that don't understand, to clear the air and kind of get a better understanding of who did what, who is who, and the reasons why. So absolutely. So go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I was in school. I was fortunate enough to be in the Special Forces medical school as an NCOIC, which is a guy in charge. And at that point, they integrated some Navy SEAL to be instructors also with us, but they had to go through our training. And we're a great bunch of guys. They're a little bit more loose, you know, than we are. A little bit more free spirited than we are. And but we're great bunch of guys. But you know, it just always upset me because there's a lot of great Medal of Honor recipients that I met too that were Green Berets as well. Great gentlemen. And I'm thinking, man, why doesn't someone make a movie about these guys? But yet my buzz and deals, they're popping out movies, and which is good for exposure and books. But I'm thinking, man, there's some great stories out there. And I met two gentlemen. I was fortunate enough to meet two of them in person, and one smoked my butt back in the day. But and I'll tell you later on maybe the story. But I was a radio teletype operator when I first came in, and I did my first 6 years. So when my time came to reenlist, all my buds were, you know, we only had back then one SRB, which is 1 times your base pay. So 6 years, you reenlist for 6 years, you get like $6,000 before taxes. And all my buds were like, hey man, I want to reenlist, I want to get $6,000. First thing, buy a stereo, buy a car. And I'm looking at field artillery unit, man, this 6 years for 6,000, is it worth it or not? And I had a medic friend of mine. He happened to be my neighbor in the duplex. We lived in a 1-bedroom duplex, and my neighbor was a medic in the field artillery unit. And every now and then we go out for 16 days, and he'd tell me, hey, Santiago, I went to go see my wife. for like 30 minutes. I went to McDonald's. I said, how'd you do that? Oh, yeah, we asked for resupplies, man. We went back to the rear to go get resupply medicines and bandages. I'm like, that's a ticket right there, man. I got to be a medic. So when my time came to reenlist, and the retention NCO says, you're gonna throw away the $6,000? I said, look, brother, I can't do it for $6,000. Because look at the life that I'm living, in the field, 16 days at a time, 30 days at a time, in peacetime, and just exercises. I said, I said, I'm from San Antonio. All the medical schools are in San Antonio, Texas. I said, what's the longest school that I can go to at the time? He looked at my qualifications, checked it all. He says, the only thing we have opening right now is dental assistant, or you can be an x-ray tech. X-ray tech, you're going to be in San Antonio for 16 weeks, and if you get lucky, you do your on-the-job training, which is OJT there in Texas. I said, I'm in, man. I raised my right hand. I said, I'm going to be home for 16 weeks with my wife and my daughter. So I did that. Once I got to the X-ray technician school, I'm like, what the heck did I do? Because terminology, medical, I wasn't, I didn't know anything about medicine. And it's blowing my mind, anatomy, physiology, and everything else. I'm like, what the heck did I do? But I struggled, studied my butt off, and my wife was my study buddy. She made cue cards and ended up passing the X-ray technician course, and I got to do my 8 more weeks there on for the OJT, which is on the job training. So we were here for almost 7 months, and it was great. I'm like, man, I'm right at home, saving my leave. And from here, my first assignment was Fort Riley, Kansas, and the Big Red One. So I went to Unit Spec 4, and Spec 4, the regular conventional Army. If I would have known better, but I didn't have a mentor. So
Mm-hmm.
the conventional unit, I'm a Spec 4, getting ready to get on the Spec 5. Back then, I ended up being a Spec 5, a Specialist 5. That rank doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a E6 do PT with us, and I'm like, I'm fit. I'm not a stud, but I'm fit. Do my PT. Never saw an E7 or above do PT in the unit I was in. So at the time, I'm there like 4 months. I get promoted to Spec 5. And once that happened, that changed my world in that unit because someone yelled out, oh, NCO meeting after PT. So I'm standing with my buds, and I forgot I was a Spec 5. I was an NCO at that point. So they said, Specialist Sanchez, you're one of us. I'm like, oh, yeah. So I go over there in the meeting, and these NCOs, I'm like, man, just the regular mentality, the regular Army mentality back then. And these guys like, yeah, I want to do a health and welfare check on specialist so I want to burn them, and they're like just trying to create chaos for the enlisted guys. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. I'm a different person now because of my rank. So I was one of them, but all they were doing is not trying to motivate the troops. They're trying to, degrade the troops or trying to see who they could, point fingers and just do malicious things. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, this is kind of crazy. Well, one Spec 6, he took a liking to me. His name was a Specialist Aguilar. I think he was Argentinian descent. And he used to give me a ride because we lived in something called a small little town called Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple. That was about 30 miles away. So to save me some money, he said, hey, man, I'll pick you up, because, instead of both of us driving, and you want to give me a couple of dollars of gas, if not, don't worry about it. So I drove with him, coming to work, and we leave the same time. And he was a 91 Charlie. That was like a nurse, kind of yeah, 91 Charlie was what do you call him? A nurse's assistant, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there like 6 months, and Aguilar, he said, "Hey man, I want to introduce you to this PA." Okay, you see, yeah, he was a special forces guy in Vietnam. No idea who he's talking about. I say, okay, so we took me to the clinic, and PA comes into the room, and Aguilar says, "This is the guy I wanted you to meet, sir." Back then, there were warrant officers. Nowadays, they're commissioned officers. There's no more warrant officers in the position assistant. And he said, so Aguiar says that he likes you, man, and he thinks that you'd be a good fit to go into special forces. I said, sir, I had no idea, Chief, what you talking. Well, let me tell you, I was in Vietnam, and I was back then. You went through the training, you go to special forces, but when you finish your mission or you finish your tour in Vietnam, you go back to whatever you're doing. If you were a cook, you go back to being a cook. We didn't have a branch like they do. The branch developed back in the 80s, late 80s. So I said, yeah, it sounds interesting. He said, yeah, they send you to school, you jump out of airplanes. I'm like, really? I said, really? He said, yeah, you'll have fun, man. So give it a try. Submit your paperwork. So I said, I mean, I went in blind. Back then, no internet stuff that you could research it. What am I trying to get into? So I put my documentation, and one of those NCOs that was always trying to go after the troops, he says, "Man, why do you want to go SF?" Well, back then he wasn't even called Special Forces. He just, why do you want to be a Green Beret? I said, well, I talked to one of the PAs. He said I'd be a good fit. He said, man, you're gonna be jacked up, man. It's a bunch of sissies and whatever. Well, what I found out, he had gone to the 82nd. And a lot of rejects, we call them rejects in special forces. They go back to the 82nd or somewhere like that if you want to stay on jump status until you resubmit your paperwork. And that happened to me. And so I was a reject at one point. But so I submitted my documentation, and the 8th month we were gone. I was gone, so my wife went back to Texas. We stayed with her mother, my daughter, and I went to the training. And they rearranged the type of training, supply and demand type thing in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And back then it was phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1, you just do your rucksacking, your PT, and they're trying to weed out the weak, and weak is really mentally weak,
Mm-hmm.
not physically. It's just like being a BUDS training in Navy SEALs. It's really, you can be a stud, you can be 6'5", the typical thinking that the Rambo looking guy, but it's all mental, man. 90% of it is mental. If you let it get to your head, you're not gonna make it. So anyway, I went down there, and the hardest part in phase 1 was land navigation. Because land navigation, you're going to 3 points. Three at night, I think 2 in the daytime back then, and each point from one point to the other could be 8 clicks to 10 clicks. And it's just you, azimuth, and a compass, and the map, and that's it. And at nighttime,
Oh, okay.
they smoke you. They can smoke you. So it ended up
Mm-hmm.
smoking me. And during the day, I said, my second point, I said, man, I've got 8 minutes to hump 6 clicks with a 65-pound rucksack on my back. So I'm not going to make it. So I basically just gave up. I said, it's impossible. So I went to the nearest road, sand road, and they said, if you're hurt, go to the road, or if you're lost, go to the road, and an instructor will come up and meet you. And that's what I did. So the instructor said, hey, man, what's going on? You hurt? I said, no, sir. He says, so what's going on? I said, well, I'm not going to make it. I've got 6 clicks, and I've got like 20 some odd minutes, and to come back another 6 clicks, I said, it's impossible. I can't make it, So, I mean, there's no use for me even trying. So you're quitting? I said, I'm not quitting. I'm being practical, man. Sir, I'm being practical. I'm not going to make it. I've got 65 pounds on me. I'm not going to make it. He said, where are you from, man? And this guy was an instructor, NCO. And I said, San Antonio, Texas. He said, no shit. I said, yeah. I'm not sure we can curse or not, but
Yeah, good. You're good.
I said, no. I said, no. I said, I'm from San Antonio, Texas. He says, no shit. I said, yeah. He said, what high school did you go to? I said, Harlandale High School. He said, no shit. He said, I went to Burbank and we're rivals,
Mm-hmm.
I said, really? I said, yeah. I said, a small world, man. So he looks at me, he says, I'll tell you what, Sanchez, what if I give you the point, man, and you just do your land nav at night? And back then, just like police departments, integrity is a big thing, man. Integrity. And I'm thinking, is he trying to mess with me? he gives me the point so I can keep going. And he said, I'll give you the point, man. I'll give you that point, and then you just have to finish at nighttime. And I looked at him and said, nah, I said, if I can't do it, it's going to be on my mind for the rest of my life, I said, I got to take my hits, man. I said, sir, I said, I got to take my hits. He said, okay, get in the truck. You're out of here. So I got bounced out of SF, and at the point of you being dropped as a candidate, they ask you still want to stay on jump task? And if you don't, then you're open to a worldwide assignment. But if you want to stay in the jump task, there's only a couple of units. One in Italy, I think it was
Mm-hmm.
a 509, and 82nd. I said, jumping was good. Plus, it's going to bring me another $110 a month for my family. So, yeah, I want to stay. It was all about money, finances, $110 was a good little chunk. So I stayed there, went to the 82nd, signed into the 82nd, and they're like, SF was telling me, yeah, you can apply within 6 months, put your application again. Once you get to 82nd, they changed the rules. They said, no, you're here for 3 years, man. You can't leave us for 3 years. And it was in 1982. I was signing in, and I'm at the station waiting for my first sergeant, and TNN pops up. Fort Irving, California, 82nd, airborne. 3 people die on the jump on the drop zone, and you see parachutes lit up and equipment falling on top of people because the winds were so high. And back then, when you jumped, there weren't limitations on what a safety jump would be on the ground. Didn't matter
Mm-hmm.
how strong. So a couple of people got trampled, and these guys, you couldn't eject your parachute, so they're being dragged on the ground. And I'm thinking, holy crap, what am I going into? Because the guys are like, oh man, you're gonna go jump 82nd. They're the jumping junkies, almost alcoholics, for there were there's a double A on the airborne patch.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, man. So anyway, long story short, I ended up doing my time there, reapplied, and the second time, I ended up making it. I got through. The land nav was my obstacle. All those 3. Everything else is going to be new, but I got to get to the land nav, and I got through with it, and went through the course, made it, and I felt pretty good. I'm like, oh man, I finally made it. 3 years in the making, and all this headache, and so I went through it, and it was cool. It was cool. It was man. I felt guilty getting paid for what I was doing, cross training, blowing stuff, and then I'm cross training my people, teaching my the weakest guys you want to train up. So my weakest guy on the team was my team sergeant. He's the NCO who's in charge. So I'm doing dental anesthesia, and I'm letting him do my dental anesthesia on me. His hand's shaking, and I'm like, fuck. Don't stick your needle on my cheek or something. So it was great. But that's how I ended up. I started. If it wouldn't have been for Aguiar introducing me to that PA, I don't know if I would have made it a career, because I didn't come in the military thinking I want to make it a career, but I needed the money, and that's how to SF.
That's awesome. So as a when you got to your first time going through SFAS, which is a Special Forces Assessment and Selection, you voluntarily withdrew. The second time when you went through SFAS and ultimately you succeeded, and then you got to the Q course. Why did you choose the Special Forces medic route? And what were some of the unique challenges that you faced on that road?
And I'll tell you, Carlos, you mentioned 6 Special Force Selection Assessment. They don't have that anymore. I mean, they didn't have that back then.
Mm-hmm.
That started that's like a totally new thing before you even start the SF course. Back then, phase 1, they took about like 4 weeks, and it was just PT in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
run the walls as fast as they could, instructors, and they would rotate instructors. Those guys were fresh meat. So we're like, 2 miles, one instructor, 6 miles, 6-minute miles, and the other guy picks up another 2 miles, and you're being smoked.
And you're expected to keep the pace.
Because if you quit, then they mess with you more. You do more remedial PT. You do a lot of PT in the morning, do a couple of small classes. Then in the afternoon you go for a rug. And 4 weeks, they're just doing this, and you're doing PT like at 4:30 in the morning. So that was what SFA has replaced. So you do that, and then you finally go to phase one. Phase one, where you do your critical skills, land navigation, some survival stuff, and all that. And then phase two was when you go to your MOS training, which is, and because I had the medic background as an X-ray tech, that automatically puts you in the medic slot to go through the 18 Delta course. That's how they did it back then. If you were infantry guy, you were weapons guy. If you were like, before I became an X-ray tech, if I would have tried this as a commo guy when I was a commo guy, I wouldn't have had a choice automatically. Unless they're so critical, then sometimes they'll be looking for candidates. And the SF medic was always short, always critical when I was in. So if they were real critical, then they would say, "Hey, man, you have a weapons background, but we need medics, so we're gonna send you to the medic course." But that's how they used to do it back in the day. You didn't really have a choice.
Oh, okay. How about some of the memorable experiences that you had during that service, during that pipeline, I guess?
As a medic, oh
Absolutely.
man, I've got pictures there. But those are two pictures from Bolivia. But being a medic, uh, we would do what they call back then. They call medical civic action programs, med readies. And we go to a different country, and I was fortunate. I mean, I grew up speaking Spanglish, so because in Texas, guys in California, most of the guys that I'm aware of, they're Hispanic, speak Spanish. They're like ASA, stuff like that. That's it. In Texas, we spoke Spanglish, so it was like, "Hey man, let's go eat vamos a comer un hamburger, man. Let's go eat So some words in Spanish, some in English, but the majority is Spanglish. So I was fortunate enough to be assigned to Seventh Group. Seventh Group worked in Central and South America, and for that reason, I was considered a native speaker. So they didn't send me to an additional Spanish school, which would have taken me and my family to California for like 8 months. That would have been a vacation. But they're like, the army was like, no, 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 you speak Spanish, man. You're good to go. You learn the rest of it down range. And that's how he perfected down range. But on these medical civic action things, man, you're going to a village, and the presence of just U.S. military in a foreign country, especially a developing country, is so great because they think you're all gods, and all the NCOs on the team, they're treated as if you were officers. You eat with the officers, you sleep in their officer quarters, whatever army you're helping out. They take the credit because they pick a village that's poor, and they take the credit. Look what we're doing,
Hmm.
but the auspices of being, the umbrella of the U.S. But once you're with the people, they know, hey, they see the uniform, they see your mannerism. They know you're not a local. They know you're an American, and they treated us as doctors, and for the most part, we were more qualified than some of their doctors. Uh, uh, but that's just the reality of some developing countries. But these civic actions, I mean, I don't know, I probably could count over 5,000 dental extractions I did, uh, delivered 36 babies on my own, unassisted with no equipment. It's just you and your medical bag. And not to give credit to me, because really, women back in the day, they used to give, birth in the fields and the farms. Woman does all the work. All the other stuff is just, go to the hospital because they want to hook you up with an IV, and the doctor to pay for his degree. The woman does all the work, man. The woman does all the work. You don't really need anybody to deliver a baby. But I had the opportunity to deliver 36 babies, a couple of twins. One was stillborn, and save one baby. There was, respiratory arrest, and training just kicks in, and that feels good. But yeah, helping these people and just passing out Motrin, Tylenol, little things that we take for granted. Uh, you really couldn't do sometimes a proper diagnosis, but you can't do blood work, you can't take an x-ray. It's just you and your medical bag and whatever medical supplies you bring. But you can still do some good, clean some wounds, or one time this lady had cut her leg with a machete. She had like a 8-inch gap, about half an inch deep. She was out in the field clearing her fields, and we rushed her to us, and so cleaned it up, sutured it up, gave her some analgesics, some painkillers, and people were grateful. I mean, the gratitude, it was incredible. It's just uh, it's you meet some interesting people, and you find interesting. You learn things about yourself, man. I had my teammates pulling teeth, and I'm like, man, this is great. And I look around because I was in charge. I was the senior medic. Every team has two medics, a senior medic and a junior medic. And it's not so much that you have the most experience. It's kind of like time and grade.
Hmm.
The senior man, he takes the role. So I was always a senior medic, but teaching my guys stuff and so it's okay to curse and say
Yeah,
stuff like that.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Because one story, man. Uh, I wrote guys in Bolivia delivering the babies, and the ladies came to us only because they knew we were giving away free stuff. So we give them a little bottle of Johnson & Johnson's baby shampoo. We give them 2 boxes of pediatric diapers with Mickey Mouse printed on them. We give them some soap. We give them some sanitary napkins, and we put out the word: if you come to our clinic, we're going to give you some of these things. So they'd come and deliver their babies with us. So they'd come, we check them out, and it looked like it was close enough. We'd let them stay there overnight if the contractions were pretty close. We hook up with an IV, initiate Pitocin, which increases the contraction, or relieves the contractions a little bit, makes a little delivery a little bit easier on them. But I was rotating my guys. So I've got one of my weapons guys. He's helping me out delivering a baby. So I'm telling him, okay, how to get ready to deliver the head. When the head is pronounced, baby comes out. He's holding the baby. I'm taking charge of the placenta. You got to put a little pressure on the umbilical cord to make sure it all comes out in one unit, and there's no tears inside. That'll cause some severe issues. So I'm delivering the placenta. The weapons guy comes up, and he's standing right next to us, looking at this because he's going to be the next delivery. And I'm looking at Pete, and Pete, he's in one of the pictures I sent you. Pete Benaxis. He starts turning white. So my other buddy, he's got the baby. I've got the placenta, and Pete's like 3 feet away from us. He's getting ready to pass out in front of us, and we just make room. We move to the side. He falls flat on his face. In 30 seconds, we're yelling at him, Pete, you okay? You okay? He comes to, and he heads out. So we deliver the baby, clean up the baby. I suture up the lady because we did a episiotomy to help the delivery of the baby. And everything's under control. About an hour later, I see Pete in the dining facility. He said, man, that was the nastiest shit I've ever seen. He said, I'll never eat pussy again, man. I said, Pete, trust me, you will, brother. You'll forget about it. He said, that was nasty, man. That was so nasty. And we're just laughing. And sure enough, Pete helps us the next day, but he was reluctant. He kept saying, man, I'll never go down on a woman again. I said, Pete, you'll forget about it, brother. Trust me. You'll forget about it. Things like that, you bond and with the guys. And I mean, I felt guilty getting paid as an SF medic, doing things that if I would have had a mentor, I would have started my career and not, I'm going to say wasted my first 6 years in the Army, because it was miserable. But knowing the caliber of NCOs that I told you, always just trying to, go after the enlisted and trying to burn them and make them names for themselves, But it's like a family, man. Spec Ops is like a family. It's great.
That's awesome. So how many years did you actually do in the group, seventh group?
Yeah, I ended up with 13 years. 13 years. 3 years was as NCOIC of the medic course. The first part of the medic course. First part of the medic course is all what they call didactic, classroom instruction, deep anatomy, physiology, deep medicine. Uh, so it's all classroom. You do some active training, some invasive training. You do nasal gastric tubes on each other. You do IVs. You do rectals on each other. You have to do all that stuff is for real. But when it comes to trauma training, it's all moonlight. We do simulated injuries on each other as the students, and you try to smoke each other. Because what's that's 32 weeks of classroom instruction, just classroom instruction. And that used to be at Fort Sam. So that was another perk. The guy's like, man, I'm going to be in Fort Sam. Fort Sam, if you've never been to San Antonio, Texas, it's like a party town. It's I think it's the seventh biggest city in the U.S. So we've got SeaWorld. We've got a theme park. We've got the Alamo. We've got the Riverwalk. Riverwalk. They call it Riverwalk, but it's just a little channel downtown, but it's full of bars and hotels and real nice. There's always activity downtown. So, I mean, a lot of students, they flunk out because they're partying and forgetting about their studies, But yeah, so I haven't had a chance when the school was here at Fort Sam. That's where I'm talking from. I'm here in San Antonio. Came back and stayed here and retired in my hometown. Uh, but so it was another, when the school was here, it was great. And in '96, they decided to move the school back to Fort Bragg because the second part of the training, medical training, is at Fort Bragg. That's where they call it the goat lab. That's where you practice on goats. It used to be dogs, and that became a big issue with all these, animal lover associations. You've got to do training. You've got to do live training.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think doctors are doing the training on us, on humans, when you have all these universities that have residencies. So,
Mm-hmm.
I never saw what the issue was, I mean, because they traumatize your goat and you get issued two goats. One is for anesthesia and he'll never come out of the operating room. The other one is for you to take care of for 8 weeks. And if something goes wrong with the goat, you've got to treat it. You've got to check the fecal matter. You got to check the urine, check the blood every 3 days, make sure the goat is healthy. So, and then in '96 they moved the whole school to Fort Bragg. Uh, so, but it's interesting, man. It's a heck of it's an eye opener. I mean, I some guys are smart in the course and they understood everything. I was one of the guys, and there's a few of us. I was one Ranger Max, man, because anything above 70 and above, you pass your test. So that was always my goal. So I ended up with like an 85 average overall. But if I passed the test with 70, I was celebrating. I'm like, I'm good to go, man. I don't need anything else. For me, not being a college grad, if I would study to just pass the test. After that, I forget about everything and try to indoctrinate the new classes into my mind just to get through the course. It
Mm-hmm.
was a smoker. I mean, we started with 265 candidates, and at the end of the day, we graduated 38 of us just to be a medic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from phase one where they're trying to smoke you physically, do all this stuff, and then going through the other, your MOS training. And it was 265 of us, and we graduated 38 of us. And
That's awesome.
out of 38, there were 6 guys that were already Green Berets, but because we were so short, they asked them, "Do you want to reclassify to be a medic?" But they had to go through the training, and they said, "Sure," because they saw the in their training that they received. So we had 6 guys that were already Green Berets in our class.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of motivating us and telling us more about how it was to be on a special forces team. So they kind of geared us and gave us a little bit more hope because during the course of the medical training, especially when you get to the GOAT lab, I mean, GOAT lab 8 weeks doesn't seem like a long time, but we would have to show up for PT 5 in the morning. In the evening, or during the day, you had classes. From 10 o'clock, they wouldn't let you start doing your lab work on the GOAT till 10 p.m. So shortage of equipment. There's 38 guys trying to do these labs. You were lucky if you left the schoolhouse at 1 o'clock in the morning. The latest I got out of school was 2 o'clock in the morning, and go home see my wife while she's asleep. My kids were asleep, and put the alarm for 4. So I slept 2 hours. Go back to the schoolhouse. So you're doing that for 8 weeks, man. Some guys literally slept there and made their bed there. But I had my family. That's why I'm not going to be away from for 8 weeks. But I remember one time on a red light, my eyes closed, and I opened my eyes, and the light was green, and I'm thinking, am I going or am I coming? Because I couldn't remember if I was going home or if I was coming back to the schoolhouse. And I literally got out of the car to see my surroundings because your mind is fried. Your mind is fried. But yeah, it was a smoker. And that's why a lot of the MOSs they say, oh, the medics are the smart ones. The medics are the smart ones. But when in reality, I always thought my MOS, being an SF medic, I was the most important guy in the team. I'm like, yeah, man. But at the end of the day, the most important guy is the common guy because without communications, if shit hits the fan, you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to help. So, but initially it was like, oh, I'm the baddest guy on the team because I'm the medic and I'm responsible for all these guys' health and welfare. They get shot, they're going to count on me. And then it dawned on me, so no, man, the important guy is the common guy. So anyway,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how did your training and experience prepare you? Obviously, it prepared you for combat and emergency situations in the military. Um, was it like you kind of already touched on that actually. You know what? Scratch that question because now I'm thinking about it. You told a story about Bolivia. You told a story about. I'm just going to edit this part out. Boom. All right. So after serving in the military, what prompted your transition to a career in law enforcement, and how did the military background influence your approach as a police officer? Sorry about that.
yeah, no, Carlos. Again, well, I left. I would have stayed in the military for 30 years, man. I'll tell you, I'll be honest. And I got out with a bad note because I felt that burned and stabbed in the back because when back in that time frame in the 90s, 85% of the students going that get selected for the physician assistant school, that's an elite school. That gives you a job for life.
Hmm.
So 85% of their students are special forces medics. So I applied in '96. The prerequisites you have to have 2 years college, and I got that finally. And because I hate college with a passion, but I got my degree just to be able to apply for PA school. And it was just bad timing. It was one of those, God knows what he's doing, and it wasn't my turn. But I applied, and the Army was transitioning. They were trying to get rid of the warrant officer PA rank and go to commission officers. So one of the things that they were doing is restructuring that and saying we want a new Army. So we want these guys to be young. So when I put in my application, in our schoolhouse, we had a warrant officer. His wife was going to sit on the board of selecting new candidates for PA school. So at that point, I had 19 years. I had one more year to retire. Well, if you get selected to be a PA candidate, then you're obligated after your training, 2 year training, to you're obligated to the Army for 5 more years. That's a known. So, but she told me, Santiago, you're not going to get picked, brother. She said, you're qualified, man. You're not going to get picked. I said, why is that? Because she told me, she said, we're transitioning to officer corps. So they want new PAs to be young PAs and new officers so they can have a lengthy service in the military. Because even after your 5 years, you may make major, but you can be a major. We want lieutenant colonels, we want colonels, even a general at some point to be more, PAs. He said, you sure? He says, yeah, submit your packet, but I'm telling you, you're probably going to get a generic letter that other candidates more qualified were selected. And sure as shit, man, my letter came, and she said, I'm sorry, Santiago, but no, you got too much time in service, meaning that I'm too old for the PA program. So I'm like, that's crazy. And they saw me, they showed me the list of the guys that got selected. One was an MP, Army MP, and not taking it away from the Army MPs, but he had no medical experience. The other guy was a dental tech. A dental tech, here I am making extractions, and he's a tech. He he's not even allowed to do anesthesia on somebody. And I've done stuff like that. But he got selected. I said, you know what? I don't want to stay in. I'm eligible at 20 to retire. I want to retire. And the guys were like, "Oh man, you make a good sergeant major. Be a team sergeant." I turned down being a team sergeant twice in my career in SF because I wanted to be a medic. I said, I don't want to be in charge of the team because then you kind of pull away to the operation spectrum of it and planning of missions. I
Mm-hmm.
said, no, I want to be a medic, man. So so I retired, and I retired with a bad taste in my mouth. So I retired not being prepared, thinking, what am I going to do? So uh, that's the only reason I retired. If not, I would have stayed because my dream was to become a PA. And after you serve your time in a conventional unit as a PA, I would have chosen the 82nd Airborne. 82nd is a great unit to be for mentorship. I mean, I saw E8s, E9s doing PT regular. I didn't see that in the conventional Army. So I said, man, this is a good unit, even though it's not spec ops, but it's a good unit. You jump out of airplanes. And then my ultimate goal was to go back to special forces once I became a captain and just do the max I could do there. And that was my dream goal. And when the military, because of their choosing restructuring their military rank, I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to stay in anymore. So I got out. When I got out, didn't know what to do. So I started substituting in school districts, and that was fun. I substituted elementary school kids all the way to high school, junior high. Even I did alternative schools, which usually are trouble kids, and that was fun. So I'm trying to look for jobs, trying to look for direction. And someone said, "Hey, man, cops are always hiring." And I hate using the word cops because it kind of degrades being. But people use the word cops a lot on the outside. They say, "Yeah, yeah, man, become a cop." They said, "I think you'd be a good cop." I'm like, never thought of that. It's okay. So I started applying. I applied to my hometown, San Antonio, but because it's really tourism is the biggest income here in the city. So everybody and their mother wants to be a police officer in San Antonio. So
Mm-hmm.
I applied. I didn't have my copy of my DD Form 214 that shows my credential. It shows that I was honorably discharged because on the test they give you 10 additional points. So my score was like 85. That would have given me a 95. The higher the score, the more likely you're going to get accepted to the police department here in San Antonio. So they just told me, okay, we'll call you. And I never got a call. So I started applying for new brownfuls, took the test, passed the test, had to do the PT test next. And then the chief came on and said, well, congratulations to, I think there's like 25 of you, but we only have one slot. And I'm like, why am I going to do a PT test? There's 20 people, and some of these were people that are coming from other departments. So I walked away after I passed the written test. So then someone said, Houston, man, for some reason, it was 97, somewhere in Houston had lost. I think there was a hurricane or something that happened, but 200 officers walked out of Houston had 200 officers vacancy. And I'm like, man, I don't want to go to Houston and uproot my family. All my wife has all her family here. We're from San Antonio, so I didn't try that. Then someone said Austin was hiring. So I went, I took the test, passed the test, did my PT test, and they accepted me right away and said, hey, man, that was the beauty. I ended up learning later on that, law enforcement, post office, they love their vets. They love the vets. So I always, any military young guys that don't have direction, I say, look, man, join the military. Whether it's the Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, it doesn't matter. Join the military, it'll give you some kind of direction. And if you get out and you don't want to go to school, look into law enforcement. Law enforcement always needs good people, man. And they love military because you're disciplined. And I found out, being a police officer, I thought it was, police departments were tight, real tight. There's some groups that are tight, like SWAT, but in the general population, they're not really as tight as I thought they would be. And I was kind of disillusioned because, uh, so anyway, I got hired by Austin. I commuted for a year and a half. From Austin to San Antonio is about an hour and a half commute one way. So one thing I loved was the ride-alongs. I had my neighbors, had a couple people, even my daughter. my wife rode with me as a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a real easy on the road, man. I drive kind of slow, take my time. And I told my wife, I said, don't think I'm showing off or trying to scare you, but something happens, and I had a pursuit. So she's screaming in the car. She said, just be quiet, please. I've got to concentrate. I
Yeah.
have her in the car. I said, I'm doing my job. So ride-alongs are great to show the public what it is to police officers. And so for
Mm-hmm.
people, departments, unless you were in those shoes, you really have no say-so.
To kind of piggyback off what you're saying, ride-alongs, absolutely. There was, I don't know if you had this technology or whatever when you were, I don't know how long you were a police officer, but when I was going through the academy, there was obviously the ride-along, but there was a room where we went into the room and it was screens. It was kind of like it was kind of like being in a video game, and you had scenarios. So I remember one scenario specifically. I was responding to a robbery in progress at a bank. And when I got to the bank, there was the one guy, he had the firearm he had the pistol to the teller, kind of telling her, give me all your money. And I had to draw the weapon, freeze, put your weapon down, step away from the counter and kind of go through the motions on that. And he drew, he pointed the weapon in my direction, so I had to shoot him. And, I'm kind of like looking around and seeing what's going on, and then the scenario, like the screen flashed, or it panned over, and there was another guy. There was a second suspect there, and he shot me. You know what I'm saying? So like those type of things, or someone coming out of the car, someone getting out of the vehicle, and they just turn real quick and shoot at you. So you don't realize people don't realize how much adrenaline and how much like you have to be on your A game. You have to be paying attention when dealing with those type of situations, and you are responsible for making split-second decisions that can alter your life or theirs, or both. And like what is required emotionally to deal with the aftermath of those situations. And I don't think like that video game scenario training piece, whatever, was kind of an eye opener to a lot of people that have never been exposed to those type of situations. And like a lot of the people that handled a lot of those things pretty smoothly were some of the veterans. So, so going back to what you were saying, you were talking about you had an hour and a half trip to and from Austin to San Antonio to be able to get to your new job as a police officer in Austin. And
well, I commuted for a year and a half, and I found myself falling asleep on the road a couple of times where the tires were off the shoulder. And I told my wife, I can't hang anymore. We got to move. So we moved to Round Rock, which is just north of Austin. And I love being a police officer. And I say, you know what? There's only two of us. Two SF, three SF guys, and one Navy SEAL. One SF guy, he ended up being a poser, man. SF guy was on a SWAT team, and a Navy SEAL guy, he was a sergeant in charge of SWAT. So I decided at the age of 42 to go to SWAT school. I went to SWAT school, and I'm trying to motivate the guys because I'm saying, you can't smoke me because they're trying to smoke us. And my other classmates like, shut the fuck up, man. They're gonna more pushes. We're gonna run. Oh, I said, man, it's just a game, man. And I'm trying to motivate them in that way, but they didn't understand my mentality, So anyway, passed the SWAT course and did all that, and then I ended up making a hard decision. Well, not too hard because there was a chief. Chief Nee was the chief for Austin Police Department. Great chief, man, real humble guy. He took charge of one of the companies overseas as a contractor, but got a call from one of the guys. So I've already been 2004. I've been out of the Army 7 years. I still have my paramedic credentials, and because that's all you come out of. That's the unfortunate thing. You jack of all trades. You can deliver babies, pull teeth as a medic. The only thing you come out of that helps you out in the civilian world is a paramedic license. And some of the paramedics can't even do half of the stuff that we're allowed to do. you know. And some of them do a lot more because they have the capability and technology and equipment that we don't carry. But anyway, so Bud calls me and say, "Hey man, Plain Colombia is in Colombia, South America, and we need a guy to take over training the search and rescue team, the Colombian search and rescue guys." I said, "But I need an answer tomorrow, man." And back then, I was making like 45,000 as a police officer. He said, "This job's you're gonna get paid 63,000. You get room and board. You can live in an apartment. You get an allowance for an apartment for you and your family. You get a car." I said, "Man," I told my wife, "What do you think?" My kids are in school. Have one in high school, and I'm thinking, man, I got to make a decision by tomorrow. I'm gonna get paid like 15 grand more. I'm almost 20 grand more. And I told my wife, "Help me, help me," and she said, "I'll support you, whatever you want." I've got the greatest woman, man. We've been married 48 years coming December.
That's awesome.
Whatever you want to do, we'll do. And I'm thinking, my daughter is thinking, I've got a career as a police officer. I just finished SWAT training. I said, "I can't do it, brother." He said, "Okay, man." Then he called me up next. He said, "But we do have a slot for a rotator position. You're going to be a search and rescue medic flying on real missions over there. Every day is a real mission because they're spraying coke fields with the chemicals to kill the coke leaves. And you're in a whole Huey, Vietnam Huey. You're with your weapon. You've got another guy with a 60, and you're protecting the guy spraying." I said, "Okay, so how does that work?" So yeah, you get paid about. It comes out to like 63 throughout the year, but you work 15 days in country and you go home for 11 days. So every month you're going back and forth. But I need an answer the next couple of days. So I shot the chief an email. I said, "Look, sir, I've got a chance to." I kind of hyped it up. So I've got a chance to do something for my country. Got some connections there. There's this program, a federally funded program, and a narcotics thing, and this is what it entails. But I've got to take a leave of absence for a year. And he said, "I'll let you do it for a year." So got a leave of absence, did the Colombian thing, 15 days over there, travel, come home for 11 days. It was great, man. I was flying on a bird, doing, we're doing rappelling, doing things that you have to maintain as a search and rescue guy. And I'm like, man, this is like being in the Army.
Yeah, I was gonna say you back in the military.
You get every now and then you get shot at from the guerrilla forces there in Colombia, the FARC. But I'm like, it was a real mission every day that they're spraying. So I'm like, it's great. So at the end of the year, the guy says, "Hey, man, you going to resign?" Because it automatically renews your contract. And I'm like, "I've got to talk to the chief." Talk to the chief, said, "Santiago, Officer Sanchez, I let you do it for a year, but we need you back on the street. For sure. Police department's always short." And he said, "So you either resign or, you stay on the job." And I'm like, man, pulling my hair, my wife getting her feedback. She said, "I'll support." She said, "This job, I'm getting paid more money, babe, and I'll be doing the same thing. I'm leaving for 2 weeks at a time. We're going to be making more money, and I'm having fun. I'm enjoying this. This is great." She said, "We'll do it." So I resigned. Broke my heart. I resigned in 2004 after 5 years on the force, and kept doing the Colombian thing. Then I got that slot again to be a full-time position, to be an advisor for the search and rescue, Colombian search and rescue. So I took my wife, my kids had already graduated school, so her and we moved to Colombia, lived there 3 years. I deployed to different parts where they were spraying coke fields and things like that. And after 3 years, it was time to, there's no more openings for anything else. And so I could have found a gig in Iraq because stuff was still going in Iraq. My wife said, let's just go back to Texas. So still had my police officer credentials. Okay, let's look for a department. And so I got hired on by a different department here in San Antonio. It was the San Antonio Park Police. And good job, great job. You patrol the city parks, so you get a lot of dopers, a lot of sex crimes go there. I used to do back in high school, park in the woods, with my wife, and she hates when I tell the story. Hey, that's the reality. That's what happened when we were young. But it was a great job. So I'm there, went to their academy, had to go to their academy, and as they didn't have a lateral program, so I had to go through the full academy. So I did that. And it just reinforced everything I already knew, but I hadn't done for about 3 years, as a police officer. So we did that. 14 months later, I get a call. Hey, man, there's an opening here in Iraq. I never went to Afghanistan. There's an opening here in Iraq, and it's it's 60 days on and 30 days off. No, 90 days. 90 days on, 30 days off. I'm like, man, I haven't been away from my wife for 90 days, but the pay is like 140,000. I'm like, I jump on it, man. Double my pay just like that. It was crazy. So I took that. I resigned from that police department, and my sergeant, because being it wasn't I was proactive. I did thousands of traffic stops because that's how you found bad guys. So my sergeant, I was one of the few that wanted to work and do traffic stops, and he said, "Hey, look, man, just kind of take it easy, because you're literally making some of the other older guys. You can go to a park, sit there until they call you for 6 hours." And I'm not digging the San Antonio Park Police, good group of guys, but there's some guys that sedentary, just like having a conventional guy, doesn't want to do anything unless they tell him. But I was every day. I ended up averaging an arrest a day, and that's only because they had warrants, But I ended up averaging about one arrest a day, and that was kind of my goal, and it was fun, And so I ended up resigning, went back to do a contract job, and after about 3 years, I got tired going to the airport, seeing my wife cry, getting me choked up, and I'm like, man, the money's good, but I got to go through this every 3 months, and it's time to settle down. So I came back, got to another department, and Sergeant told me, hey, man, I ended up resigning because another job came up, overseas. And it was all because of the background, really. It wasn't the paramedic credentials. It was 18 Delta. In Kurdistan, Iraq, two CEOs of a company, they were Navy SEALs. And he wouldn't hire PAs. He wouldn't hire Navy corpsmen. He said, one of my buds got treated and saved 18 Delta saved his life in Vietnam. That's all I want on my contract. I don't care if you have training, whatever. If you're an 18 Delta, that speaks for itself. So everything I owe was being an asthmatic. What we have today. I
Take your time, brother.
just from the military.
Yeah, most definitely. The greatest country on the planet, offering the greatest opportunities to everyday nobodies like yourself and myself, sir. This is amazing. This is awesome. This is perfect. Most
But
definitely.
but anyway, but like that is just the background, man. That's why law enforcement they love. You don't have to be special for Navy SEAL. They just love military. The military is
Hmm.
the discipline. You've been tried. You have to deal with the BS, and nobody else understands.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so that's how I became a police officer. And I ended up resigning from 3 departments, and I ended up resigning. I ended up investing, I think, 8.5 years as a police officer, uh, and I was grateful. And this last department, I resigned. I finally retired in 2021 completely from everything. Told my wife, you know what, that's enough. Jobs are still out there. They're far limited right now because we don't have a conflict. And the only thing a conflict does is create jobs for contractors. And yesterday I heard on the news that the U.S. authorized Ukraine contractors to go into Ukraine, for equipment and some other stuff. But I told my wife, jobs, I get a chance to make some more money, you know. And looking at me and I'm like, I'm just playing bail. I'm just playing. I'm retired. But I started thinking, man, go back, you know, uh, do some training, training or whatever out there and be with a group of guys that 90% are going to be military,
Mm-hmm.
ex-military. But yeah, that's how I got into law enforcement. And I'm short like a year and a half to actually be able to put documentation and retire as a police officer with full credentials. But I didn't. I said, you know what? I'm good. I've got my little, I've got my little flags and my SWAT certificates. I'm good to go.
Oh, absolutely. We call it your love me handbook.
I love me wall.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I thought I've got a couple of pictures here in my little gym I have here in the house. But
Hmm.
it's been good, man. It's been everything is because of the background, basically.
Hmm.
So that's even though I left the military with a bad taste because I know I was better prepared, better experience, had more knowledge than some of the candidates that got selected. And the funny thing is on the PA thing, I retired in '97. Well, in '99, the Army found out, the PA program found out their candidates, they were getting poor quality candidates that were failing because they limited the Special Forces medic to going in there unless they were less than 10 years time in service, you know, and some other requirements. So I ran into a guy in Iraq. He said, "No, man, they're letting all 18 belters apply, and most of them are getting accepted to the PE program." So if I would have waited 2 more years, but again, you know, I got to tell myself maybe that's God has He works in mysterious ways because I know as a police officer, I mean, I was leading my patrol unit in DWIs because I looked for them, man. I looked for DWIs, little swerving here and there, and I know I stopped. At least I made 3 DWI arrests. These people were sloshed, and I probably saved their lives or someone else's life. And I'm like, maybe that's why God put me. You
Hmm.
know, I got left the military, became a police officer, uh, and saved this person's life because I mean, they could have gone off the bridge in
Hmm.
Austin, Colorado River. Uh, so who knows? So some of those things I say, okay, it wasn't meant to be. And that's why I left the military.
Absolutely. So, being a veteran of of the United States military, they often face challenges when transitioning into civilian life. What advice do you have for guys getting out of the military, transitioning back into the real world, navigating that transition? What kind of advice you have?
Well, the good thing, just like, the disabilities, nowadays, they've got so many resources. Military, I think, prepares them a lot better than what they prepared me, at least when I got out, and changes, prog- things progress as time goes on because people learn, their faults or their I guess, lack of support. But I think they get, the military does a better job now in helping soldiers transition. But for myself, any guys come out here, if you've been in the military for a tour, 2 tours, you got to be ready that the civilian mentality is totally different, and just deal with it and be patient. Be patient with them and realize that the way you think, with what you were taught, ideals, principles, doesn't really transfer over, to the civilian sector. It's got to be maybe a real tight company. I don't know, Amazon or some of these Google companies that run a tight ship and everybody's happy. Maybe Tesla does the same thing. I don't know, but I mean, I saw that as a police officer in Austin. I'd make a late arrest, and I'd come into the station, turn in my car and my radar, whatever equipment. 15 minutes late, and my sergeant would look at me and says, "Santiago, overtime sheet." I said, "I'm okay, Sarge. 15 minutes. Okay." Well, I did that for like 10 times. And finally, the sergeant said, "Santiago, you're not going to," because I think the last time I came in 7 minutes, man, 7 minutes after my shift, late, you know. And the sergeant said, "Santiago, I want you to sit down." "What for, Sarge?" I'm out of here. He said, no, you're going to fill out this overtime sheet for 7 minutes. I said, Sarge, really? He said, yeah. So to not disrespect him, he's an old cop, old school cop, real nice guy. He said, no, I don't want you to give, the money's not, the city's not going to, you're not going to give the city free money, man. That was the mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I said, hey, Jack, I said, Sarge, if I'm 30 minutes late, I'll put in 30 minutes because maybe like $30 for me, for gas. But 7 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm okay, Sarge. But I saw police officers, man, literally, I saw one guy submitting an overtime sheet for 4 minutes, man. I'm like, come on. I mean, it's just the mentality is not there,
Mm-hmm.
because the city's going to take $2, they're going to keep it instead of giving it to you. So I'm generating a full sheet of paperwork, and it's got to go through all these channels just to give me $2, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I'm like, what? Then my eyes started opening. I said, no, man, the spirit de corps, the duty on our country is not really there as compared to the military. It's totally different. And it's unfortunate, but that's a reality. Money talks, and I guess uh, they didn't want to see the city, you know, keep that monies for the city versus giving it to you as a police officer. Police officers, they still don't get paid their worth, but I didn't see, any harm in me. Hey, I'm 5 minutes late, man. It's okay. It's not going to kill me. And after like the 10th time, he actually told me to sit down, and I wasn't going to get up, and I didn't argue with him, and I filled it out. But I'm like, man, this is anywhere close. I thought it was really tight. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it was more of a political thing with
Yeah.
the Sarge.
The one team, one fight mentality didn't really translate over. I understand what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's just be you got to be patient, man. And if you got a hard charger, especially if someone comes out from a spec ops unit, Ranger, I love Rangers. They're a little bit too hard for me, because I never worked with a Ranger, but we got treated good by a Ranger battalion from Sports Stewart, Georgia. You got time, got a little story there, you know.
Yeah, let's hear it.
The 4-day weekend, but we were on a mission, direct action mission out there in the woods, and it was a 4-day weekend. So everything was coordinated. At a pickup point at the end of the exercise, pickup point, we're going to get exfiltrated to go to Fort Stewart, Georgia. So we were 10 clicks away, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. We called for extraction, and they're like, 4-day weekend, man. Someone dropped the ball back at Fort Bragg, and you guys gonna have to hump the 10 clicks. I said, what? We've been doing all this humping, blah blah blah, for 7 days. Now we got to hump 10 clicks with all our equipment because someone. I'm sorry, man. They just came back to our team. We're sorry, but 4-day weekend. Someone dropped the ball and everybody's gone. So lo and behold, man, we humped. And we're like, what are we gonna do? Nobody prepared anything for us. So one of the guys was a former Ranger on the team. He called one of his buds. They contacted Ranger back there in Fort Stewart, Georgia. The guys brought a U-Haul. They hauled us to their barracks. It was by the time we got there, it was like 4:30 in the morning. They had chow being prepared for us. They got us some rooms, and we're incognito because we take all off our
Mhm.
rank. We call everybody on the team first name basis, even the
Yeah, yeah.
captain. Tell hey, I had a nickname Vato. Vato is dude in Spanish. They call me Vato. They text next guy there, and no berets, no nothing. They're like, hey brother, where's the latrine? And they're like, stand up at attention, civilian clothes over there, sergeant. I'm like, take it easy, brother. These guys are just too hardcore, man. They're too hard. We're too relaxed in SF. They're like, it's okay, bro, just relax. And once they knew who our captain was, yes, sir. Just stand up. Hey, can I get some hot sauce? Yes, sir. Here's the hot sauce. Take it easy, man. I'm like, I could never be a ranger because I was already spoiled, rotten SF. Hey, man, just like being back in the block. Hey, brother, do your job, do it well.
Mhm.
But hard. You work hard, you play hard, and take it easy. That was the mentality. But anyway, that was my ranger story. Those
Absolutely.
guys, their job good, they're hardcore, but little too disciplined for me, because I'd be getting in trouble, man.
Absolutely.
But
Shout out to the regiment.
so the second bonding agency would be, being a police officer. So I can't imagine working in the civilian sector, uh, doing something else, because I think the mentality would be a lot weaker, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, just got to be patient, and don't think that they're gonna they're gonna see what you're seeing in your mind as far as work ethic, as far as uh, I guess doing your duty to the fullest. Because most military guys, they're gonna try to outdo not their co-workers, but they're just gonna try to outdo themselves. 'Cause like you want to present yourself as a better person, as having that dedication that it's not out here. And I haven't seen it yet. And I've got some good buds, and I've got some hard charging guys, master electricians. Some guys are real dedicated, but they'll tell me, yeah, man, this guy, I can't believe he didn't do this, or he took a shortcut. But why take a shortcut, man? Someone's lives is at stake. I'm like, man, just had a friend of ours who's a master electrician. I asked him for help because this older vet, retired sergeant major, had an electrical problem. And it's kind of deviating a little bit, but to show you the mentality, it's all business. He had an electrical issue in his house, so he has one of these. Was the electrical companies come out to his house? They quoted him $20,000 to fix this issue. So he called me and said, Santiago, you know anybody? Through like networking. I said, Chris, I got this couple, man, retired sergeant major. I think they're trying to do him in. He said, no, I can't do it, man, but I'll send my buddy. Went over there. The guy did it for $2,000, man. 20,000, 2,000. Damn company is all about money. They could care less his duty to service,
Mhm.
retired sergeant, put in 34 years. They don't care about any of that. It's about the money that they can make the company. And I'm thinking, man, that's sorry, man. I made a Google review, you know. I made a Google review making that statement. I said, that's shameful, It's shameful. So it's a different world altogether. So the transition, be patient, and just hang in there, and it'll be good at the end of the day. And trust me, any veteran that comes out here in any job is going to be recognized by his performance, because 99.5 of the vets, they're going to do a better job. They are, just because of the time that they put in the military. Whatever job you did, even, you could be a cook, and people make fun of cooks, but those are hard-working individuals. I would never want to be a cook, especially in the military. Those guys get up all dark 30 and they work their butts off till after the mission is over. But
You never piss off the cook, and you never
well,
piss off the supply guy. That's all I'm saying.
finance, the finance and the money, man.
That's right. That was that's right. So let's see. Last question. This being the Veterans Day episode, and you being a veteran yourself, um, what's the message that you'd like to share with fellow veterans, those and those currently serving in the military right now? What kind of what kind of words would you like to pour onto them right now?
Man,
Kind of puts you on the spot.
it's just sorry about that, but
No, no, no. Take your time, brother. Take your time.
that part, oh man. But his home is, I know three good buddies, man, that committed suicide.
Mm.
And somehow, I don't know, man, somehow, some way, if we can reach out to our military guys that are even thinking about it, man. You gotta support them. And it's crazy because someone's gonna do it. They're gonna do it. I stopped a buddy of mine in 1996. Suppose he had a gun to his head on the phone. They told me, "Hey, man, Vato, he wants to talk to you." And I said, "Who's this?" He said, "This is Mark, man." So I just want to talk to you, Santiago. You've been a good guy, man. But I'm tired, and I'm gonna kill myself. He had a 2-year-old daughter, and I've got to explain a little bit about it, because uh, I tried to do reverse psychology with Mark. I said, Mark, put the gun down, man. I said, if I was there, man, I'd fucking shoot you. So you're gonna lose your little girl, man. She's not gonna have a father, blah blah blah. Long story short, I heard him put the gun down. I called his chaplain and went to go talk to him. That was 1996, and I think it was 2013. He actually followed through and killed himself. And a couple other bugs. One guy I was working with in Iraq, smart former 18 Delta, and he came home and he had 4 kids. He had an infant. It was 1-year-old baby, and quiet guy. We spoke, but he was real quiet, and he did himself. So I don't know what the issue. I mean, PTSD, but man, don't any Veterans Day, any indication? Talk to the guy. Talk to the girl if it's female military person. Do your part, man. Do your part, and hopefully there's too many. It's sad right now. Too many law enforcement committing suicide, being killed. Too many military. And it's just sad. It's just sad. Parties, as far as political parties, man, I've lost some friends because I voted Democrat, I voted Republican, and sometimes it doesn't work out. Just got to remember that, hey, man, the friends that I have, and they voted for the wrong party or the different party that I did, just got to continue. We're Americans, and you don't have to like the candidate, but like I tell the guys that I argue with sometimes, you know what? I didn't vote for your candidate. I don't like him, but I respect the office. You just got to do that as an American, just whatever we can do to make our country and our people stronger. Pitch in, man.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I do want to say also to add on to that I believe this is the greatest country on the planet. I'm sure you completely agree with me. This is the greatest country on the planet. No other place in the world offers the opportunities that we offer. All of that is being kept protected by people, men and women who serve in the United States military. Myself as a veteran, you as a veteran, we played a small part in the grand scheme of what it means to be an American soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, Coast Guard, and I guess now Guardian. They got those guys now too, Space Force. But we definitely, at the GrayMan Podcast and just personally, we definitely appreciate the service, the sacrifice, the selfless service, and the duty, the commitment to country. Whether you went into the military to just further your education, you went into the military like he and I, kind of similar background where we wanted to make better opportunities for our family, or you just felt a strong call to service and call a strong call to commitment, which is ironically, when I went into the Army, one of the big thing that happened when I enlisted was Pat Tillman enlisted also, if you remember the Ranger. And we definitely appreciate, honor, and respect all veterans and current serving military for this country. And this particular episode, I had to reach out to someone who was also a veteran who served in one of the more elite units in our military. But it does not mean that even the water purification guy is not playing his role. So again, like I said, happy Veterans Day for myself, from my brother right here, Santiago Sanchez. Man, I definitely appreciate it. One of the things that we're going to do for this episode is we're going to make a donation in your name to the Wounded Warrior Foundation. And I want everyone to also head over to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation and make a donation there too. Those guys are helping to change lives of some of our fallen special operations people in the community, their children and their families. And also, one of the people who support this channel and that we definitely support is the American Trigger Pullers. And I could try to get you something out there from those guys. They make awesome clothing, and a lot of it is focused on special forces, special operations, mantras, and imagery. So AmericanTriggerPullers.com. Make sure y'all check that out. I'm gonna put the link on the video. All the links: Wounded Warrior Foundation and the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. They're definitely links. Links are definitely gonna be in the description of this video, and they're in every video that I have. So, in closing, I want you make sure you take it easy, sir. Make sure you stay safe. God bless you. I appreciate you, sir. And for the rest of you guys, train hard, train often, train properly, and train safely. All right. This is the GrayMan Podcast signing off. Peace.
Amen.